We're coming, and we ain't backing down.
We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror.
Everybody just do your job. You understand that?
Hey, will you shut up?
I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today.
Guys being dudes.
And they run through our like through a tin horn, man.
This from 42. Good snap, good hold. Kick is on the way. Kick is up. End over end kick is no good. He missed it. He missed it wide right. He missed it wide right. I don't believe it, Cam. I don't believe it. It's pandemonium in Husky Stadium. You're not keeping him off the field here. Washington 36, Oregon 33 in a classic.
Thank you, Lee. And thank you to Tony Castricone and Cam Cleland of the Washington Sports Network from Learfield. Alex, download the new Varsity Network app available for both Apple and Android. Listen to college sports live with the Varsity Network app. And if you were listening on the Varsity Network app, you would have heard the absolute instant classic that was Oregon and Washington. We will get into it. We will put 30 minutes on the clock. We will talk about the games of the day. We will most certainly, Alex, go over the 30-minute time. And honestly, I think me and you could go a full 30 minutes on Oregon and Washington.
I agree. Put it on the clock. We promise we'll finish in 30 minutes or less or more for the Week 7 Split Zone Duo Hurry Up.
It is what it is. We start the clock in 3, 2, 1. Yes, Alex, indeed. Washington 36, Oregon 33. You know in NCAA when you play a great game and then the little thingy pops up and it's like instant classic, whatever the sponsorship was, whatever, it would have done this after the game. Hell, it would have probably done that at halftime. I mean, this was like basically from the third drive in the game, because both those teams went like 3 and out or whatever to start the game. And then it was on and it just didn't stop popping the rest of the game.
It was indeed a classic. It was one of the somewhat rare regular season marquee games that just delivers in all the ways that you hope it would deliver. And I don't want to blow past the game too quickly because it was two really good teams playing a really well played game. I'll say off the top that I think Ryan Grubb for Washington had a great game plan here to get the ball out of Michael Penix Jr.'s hands before Oregon could kill him. And he was a bit injured in this game with what
Sometimes they're a little late.
Yes, sometimes they were a little late, and he was also cramping a bit in the fourth quarter, Kalen DeBoer said after the game. But that was my worry, was will the injured Washington line be good enough for this guy to have the kind of day that he has? And the answer was barely, but yes. And it wasn't Michael Penix Jr.'s finest game, but he still cleared 300 yards and threw 3 or 4 touchdowns, including a brilliant go-ahead drive that only took a little bit more than 50 yards. I think it was 53 yards in 2 plays to win the game. But now, Richard, we must talk about what we must talk about, which is what we talked about coming into the game. This program, you and I, praised Dan Lanning's game management philosophy and skills effusively coming into the week. And then it didn't work. 2 calls in particular did not go the way that Dan Lanning certainly envisioned when he made them for Oregon to win this game. There was a play at the end of the first half where instead of kicking a not quite guaranteed but pretty short chip shot field goal, he went for it on 4th down and a handful and did not get points, and they went into halftime with 3 points fewer than they could have. And then, of course, at the end of the game with about 2 minutes left, going for a 4th and 3 just inside midfield to ice the game, missing short field for Washington, Rome Odunze touchdown. Personally, I got no regrets about the way that Dan Lanning generally approaches the game. I think there was one call here that I think I would have made differently if I were him. But I want your take on the way that he approached this thing.
Yeah, I did not love the end of first half go for it on 4th down. There were 3 4th downs that Oregon went for in this game and did not get. I actually think Dan Lanning, after the game, said he wanted the one at the end of the first half back. Because what I don't love is that you don't get the benefit of pinning Washington in the shadow of their own goalpost because it's the end of half. And you get the ball, they got the ball coming out of half, Oregon did, as well. So again, 3 4th downs. The first one I think you'd like to have back. They get down, they got 3rd and goal from the 3. Nix dirted a swing pass right there with one of their receivers coming in motion on the third down. On the fourth down, they run the sprint out to the right. Oh, my God.
I don't like it.
Oh, my God. Stop running
Shrinks
sprint
the
out
field.
throws.
It shrinks the field.
In the low red zone, please stop running sprint outs.
The only place where I'm cool with running the sprint out is if your problem is clock and you need to run a play where an incomplete pass will not expire the clock with like 4 seconds, 5 seconds left in the half. That's it.
I'm fine with sprint outs in the open field. That's fine.
I'm talking down at the goal line. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Like Ohio State, for instance, did against Notre Dame when they preserved a down by basically taking that kind of shot.
Right. The second fourth down that they went for it and didn't get was actually it's the perfect example of how that aggressiveness pays off, right? Nix ends up taking the one-on-one shot that he has down there. It was actually open for the first down right in front of him, but he wasn't looking there, so he didn't take it. And the receiver actually probably would have scored if Nix would have just kind of thrown it to the middle of the field, but he didn't. It is what it is. Then you have Washington pinned in the shadow of their own goalpost. Washington's drive stalls. Oregon gets them off the field. They punt. Oregon takes over right around midfield. That's shot territory, which Oregon then does, connects on the shot, touchdown, first play. So they won the sequence because they went for it on that fourth down. And then the third one at the very end of the game is literally, in my opinion, there's like zero gray area for me. Like,
yeah, me neither.
You try to end the game right there, because if you punt on that, or Washington drives the field to score, they also use more of your time, right? Oregon had plenty of time to come back and either tie or win the game.
And they
at
did.
The very
they
end.
got into reasonable field goal range, and the young man didn't make the kick, and that's going to happen sometimes. Yeah.
This is my thing. Every single high-level athlete and coach that has ever played this game at a high level will tell you that the process is more important than the results. I understand why the results matter, because there's a scoreboard and you win or you lose. But the process is very, very important when you're changing the mindset of how you play, which is what you have to do against a team like Washington. This is not Iowa, where you can count on they're not going to score. You could count on a significant number of stops. Washington, me or you could have quarterbacked Washington, and Washington scoring 35 points in this game. Like, you have to understand what you're up against. You have to understand that you want to be aggressive in this game, because you're playing against a team that scores like 4.5 points per drive.
One other part of this that I just want to make clear before we move from the game of the day. I'm already annoyed with the way that certain media members, particularly TV personalities at ESPN, at Fox, who have the biggest microphones in the sport, are going to use this to poo-poo analytics, in air quotes, and game management in general, coaches making more aggressive decisions than they might have historically made in these situations.
But by the way, Alex, and it doesn't, by the way, that first 2-point conversion that they ran after they scored the first touchdown wasn't even an, in air quotes, analytics decision. They got it because they got the look, and because they got the 2 pointers, that field goal at the end was for the tie. Now, yes, could it have been for the win if they wouldn't have gone for the fourth down at the end of the first half? Yes, I understand that, and I will give you that. But you have to understand, if they hit one of those fourth downs, the game is over and Oregon would have won.
Also, though, and I think this is important, the word analytics gets turned into a boogeyman. It is not very analytical to look at Michael Penix Jr. and those 3 to 4 NFL receivers that he has and say, fuck, man, we don't want them to have the ball again. Like, it's just football. It's just football. And the fact that they went 50-something yards in 2 plays does not exactly invalidate the idea that it would have been a really good idea to never give them the ball back. I like the way that Lanning approaches the game. I didn't like the end of the first half call, but I think Oregon fans should feel fine that they have this guy leading their program. Notre Dame, and 48. Alex,
yes. Real quick, once more before we go. It's awesome when Dan Lanning runs a fake punt at like his own 25-yard line against Colorado and it converts, but it's not awesome when they don't convert 1 of 3 and they lose the game.
Yeah. And guess what? You can lose games by punting too. And you can lose games by not being, like, we talked about Arizona and Jed Fish in overtime at USC last week, where They had opportunities to go for 2 in overtime and keep Caleb Williams off the field. They didn't do it, and they lost anyway. You can lose games being aggressive. You can lose games kicking. That's the nature of football. And there is no guarantee that won't happen if you coach the game like Dan Lanning does. Speaking of USC, 48-20 for Notre Dame in South Bend. Like a complete ass kicking, pretty much the way to put it. Like a complete program meltdown in one night for USC. I don't want to overcomplicate it. Maybe we can be quick about this one because we were so long about the first one.
I think that this game was sort of always coming for USC, but I didn't think it was going to always I didn't think it was going to happen like this. Like I didn't think you'd have 3 Caleb Williams turnover. Like you can't
Bad
even
ones
really
too.
do
Not the good kind.
You can't even really do the bit about USC's defense because like USC's defense was like against it from basically the beginning here. With
But they had no
Williams
chance.
those 3 picks.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
they had no chance.
Notre Dame got after Caleb Williams. They pressured him, forced him out of the pocket, and then Williams, he sort of yeeted it a little bit out there. And like he sailed 2 balls. Like it's one of those things where that's where you kind of see what pressure can do to a quarterback. And I'm not saying Caleb Williams can't handle the pressure. We all know how talented he is and how good he is. But this is an example of it's like the absolute worst circumstance that USC could have envisioned. It was finally the game where the offense just didn't have it and let the entire team down because they weren't able to play that complementary style of football which they have, which is offense score 40 points, defense hang on.
Richard, Oregon State 36, UCLA 24. Fun looking scene in Corvallis, but not for the young man playing quarterback for the Bruins.
Really bad from Dante Moore here, 3 picks of his own. And really put UCLA behind the 8 ball here. I think UCLA's defense is good, but again, it's similar to the USC thing. There's only so much you can do when you are really back against the wall there, because your offense gave the ball to the other team.
Stanford 46, Colorado 43 on Friday night in 3 overtimes. An astonishing collapse and one that I did not see live because around the time it was 29-0, I moved on to other parts of my night, including going to sleep, even though I'm on the West Coast. This thing was over. Obviously, the first thing you do on Saturday is go back and watch in detail. How did this happen? I think a couple points here that aren't great for Deion in his management of this game. First of all, Travis Hunter hadn't played in a month. Colorado relied very heavily on Travis Hunter, and on offense, this worked. He's an incredible football player. He's going to have an incredible career. He was, I think it is safe to say, a little bit out of sorts, gassed, tired, not quite himself, something wrong with him as a cornerback in this game because Alec Almaner for Stanford owned Travis Hunter in a way that was shocking, not just for like a star cornerback getting beat like this, but like you will rarely see any defensive back get picked on by an individual receiver the way that Almaner picked on Travis Hunter in this game. Like
Which is wild.
It was
considering it's Travis Hunter.
Yeah, considering it's Travis Hunter. It was mossing after mossing after mossing with this one receiver against this one cornerback. It's just a lot to ask of even an exceptional player like Travis Hunter on both sides of the ball. Also, Deion did the inverse of what Dan Lanning did in Seattle, and it cost him. They had a very similar situation, a 4th and 3 in plus territory to end the game when they were up late, hadn't blown all of the 29-point lead yet, and he takes an intentional delay of game instead of letting Shedeur get after it, and they punt the ball. Stanford goes down, forces overtime, and Colorado loses in overtime, thanks in part to the aforementioned Alec Almaner Travis Hunter dynamic. So not a Mona Lisa for Deion Sanders this week.
Arizona 44, Wazoo 6. This was an absolute ass kicking. I mentioned in the midweek that the Fafita kid, the backup quarterback for Arizona, can play. This dude can fucking play, man. Like, for real. Washington State, interception on a running back pass where the running back was actually the quarterback, which is not great. Ball slips out of Cam Ward's hands on a 3rd down, trying to make a throw. Like, I think Arizona is really, really frisky. This was also like the worst possible performance from Washington State. Like, both things kind of married up here. I think Oregon's really, really lucky they don't play this Arizona team because obviously USC and Washington have both found out that Arizona is really, really frisky, can give you everything you want.
Very much so. Utah 34, Cal 14. So this was a nice bounce back effort off a loss and a bye for Utah. And one thing I noticed just when going through the highlights in the box of this game, which was not one of my live watches, I went through it afterward, was that there's a guy I didn't think was a running back for them, Sione Vaki, who had like the better part of 100 yards and a very efficient running game for them, as well as their usual Jaquindon Jackson running game and Bryson Barnes, the backup quarterback, running it a decent bit himself. Richard, you might remember Sione Vaki because he had an interception playing safety for Utah against Florida. He still plays defense. He's also now a running back, and apparently a good one. Sure.
It's a classic Utahing where they figure it out over the course of the season because they're good coaches. UNC 41, Miami 31 in the ACC. Tez Walker is incredible. Like, all right, North Carolina. I get it. Yeah.
It's funny.
Like, all right.
Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't sure, and you're never sure, right? Like, everyone thought, okay, it's the right thing that he should be able to play. It's just the school is like really getting behind this young man, and we love the push
here.
We love the push for athletes' rights, but like these guys don't really, like Bubba Cunningham and Mac Brown don't really give that much of a shit about like athletes' rights. Like that's not really their thing. I get it now. I understand what you were doing, North Carolina. Point taken. Well done.
Yeah,
good decision making.
Mario is all of a sudden 9-9, I believe, at Miami, and I contend that this Miami team is not bad and is better than last year's Miami team.
Pitt 38, Louisville 21. Louisville comes into the old Heinz Field 6-0 and leaves 6-1. Pitt's got a new quarterback, Christian Vire.
Classic. The classic Pitt.
In a way,
this is the full Pitt, baby.
This is a significant Pitt situation. Pitt finally made the change that they had to make a quarterback. Yes, it calls into extreme question why they didn't do it sooner, because the difference between this team with Christian Vire playing quarterback and Phil Dracovic playing quarterback is immense. He looked great. It was awesome. And it was raining too. So, you put a French Canadian on the field in Pittsburgh sports scene, you're going to get good results. That's the history of sports in this city. Duke 24, NC State 3. Richard, I got two thoughts for you. One, I think Duke might actually be pretty good, and they're going to have a primetime game against Florida State next week. You're going to see Duke in primetime national TV for the third time already this season. Did this without Riley Leonard. Though he was on the field in warmups and looked like he might be kind of closing back in on playing with that high ankle sprain.
Well, but the problem is, Alex, is he's not going to be able to be mobile.
Probably
not. Which I think that creates a significant detriment to his game.
I think you are correct, and that's going to be a significant thing to watch whenever he does come back. But Mike Elko is a really good coach. A&M, I don't know when, but they are going to have to pay a buyout and fire Jimbo Fisher. I think everyone kind of acknowledges that at this point. It's probably not going to happen there. This is the guy that I would look at first.
I think they're gonna. Florida State 41, Syracuse 3. Jesus Christ, Keon Coleman, incredible.
See what Dino Babers said about him after the game?
Yeah. He said it's something like God was
God paid more attention or something when making him, or like. Spent some extra time with him. I don't know. But yes, he had an incredible catch in this game and a couple of really good plays. Real quick as well, 30-13 for Virginia Tech over Wake Forest. The Kyron Drones thing at quarterback replacing Grant Wells is working. Virginia Tech has kind of worked its way out of the basement of the Power 5 in the last couple of weeks. And it's mostly, I think, because of the dual threat nature of Kyron Jones, but running yards count too. Things getting a little better, starting to look up a bit for Virginia Tech. Not looking up, though, Richard, for everybody. Things are not looking up for everybody.
Illinois, 27. Maryland, 24 in the Big Ten. How are we feeling, big guy? We got the full Pitt. We also got the full Maryland.
Yeah, I mean, I hope everyone enjoyed our slight optimism about Maryland football programming. It's October. We'll see you next year. Iowa 15, Wisconsin 6. It was everything you thought it would be.
Buddy, the kids are still going to college.
That's absolutely.
You made the crack in the midweek that you would have taken this if the total was 26. And brother, dude, you would have cashed too.
It didn't get close. And here's the thing: we do tend, and I don't really apologize for this because it is kind of amazing. We do tend to focus on the ugly with Iowa.
Yeah,
which
man.
Is
Yeah, we do.
Let's also just point this out, and then I will go back to the ugly. That defense is everything you thought it would be. And we said on the midweek, there's just no way Wisconsin is going to score in this game. And there was no way Wisconsin was going to score in this game.
Iowa's scores were Iowa had a safety and also ripped like an 80-yard touchdown.
Second week in a row that they basically just get the one play a week where they block it up real good and they get a long touchdown run, and that's sufficient. They don't need much more than that because you have this defense, and you have Torrey Taylor, who, by the way, was just launching excellent punts. He punted for like a 50-plus yard average, punted like 10 times. He's a memorable special teams player. On the offense, I will say this. Yes, as documented, it's insane that this coordinator is still in this job. It's embarrassing for the industry and for the head coach. All of that is true. You could put Lincoln Riley in charge of this offense with the current injury situation that they have, and they probably wouldn't be scoring much more. They might be scoring 20. You mix in Kirk's structure and the injuries, and then the kind of Brian Ferentz governor that's on it in general, but especially the injuries right now, and it's like they're just never going to score. But guess what? It doesn't matter. They are gonna go 10-2 or 11-1, and they will play in Indianapolis. That division is already over. It's kind of impressive what they're doing. Actually,
they're not going to fire. Rutgers 27, Michigan State 24.
Rutgers came
back. Yeah, Rutgers came back in this one. Keep chopping, baby. Bowl eligible Rutgers. Many are saying, I'm just looking outside my apartment in Brooklyn, New York. They're partying in the streets, baby. Rutgers going to the postseason.
They're going to get there next week. They're going to be 6-1, and then they're going to finish probably 6-6. But they play Indiana next week. You're like a squirrel. You stuff the acorns in your cheeks, and you just make sure you have them for the day ahead. That's Rutgers right now, piling up wins. The way that Michigan State let this one get away, I think indicates a low point for Michigan State football in. I should brush up on my history, but in a very, very long time. They were up 24-6.
My good friend. It's only going to get worse.
Special teams matter.
They play next week.
Oh, who do they? Oh, is it Michigan?
Michigan 52, Indiana 7. It was never competitive. Michigan has a slick plus 149 point differential against its 4 Big Ten opponents so far this season. You know the company line. We are waiting until Veterans Day to truly have a forensic analysis of Michigan. I think we're going to talk about them in the midweek as the Big Ten finally gets a big game with one of its 3 power programs. Michigan is continuously ripping teams limb from limb. It is impressive in what they are doing.
Ohio State 41, Purdue 7, equally not competitive. Purdue kicked like a 30-yard field goal while down 27-0, and it didn't go through. Penn State took a second bye week in the middle of the season to prep for the big Ohio State game going up next week. But they, I think, returned multiple punts for touchdowns during the bye week that they took in Happy Valley this week. Also want to tell you about our dear friends at Home Field Apparel. Go to homefieldapparel.com. It is the finest place in all the land for extremely comfortable, vintage, officially licensed collegiate apparel. If you use the promo code SZD20, that's SCD20, you'll get 20% off your first order. We'd love to see that. Why pay full price when you don't have to? Also, if you go to my Twitter account, twitter.com/_Alex, Alex_Kirshner, no underscore at the beginning, Alex_Kirshner, you'll see that I have information pinned there about an event that I will be at in just a few weeks on Friday, November 3rd with Home Field and with some dogs in Athens, Georgia, where I am very excited to visit. Thanks a lot to Home Field for their support of this program. Richard, LSU 48, Auburn 18. Auburn just not good enough to create the kind of zany LSU Auburn game that we like to see as connoisseurs of the game.
LSU's offense is good. It's good. And it was good here. Really, really good. Defense finally gave you a little bit more what you wanted. I think some of that has to do with Auburn, but LSU's defense gave you what you wanted.
For Auburn, the offense is so bad that I think that fan base, even with the understanding of the crater that Brian Harsin left, and even with the understanding that things didn't work out administratively with Grayson McCall, is getting to be pretty annoyed with how bad this is. Like, Hugh Freeze and Phil Montgomery as offensive coordinator are supposed to be good at this. And it's not just
a quarterback. They don't have a quarterback.
Whose fault is that?
Well, Auburn's administration, kind of.
Anyway, it's worse than I think it has to be, is kind of the observation I keep coming back to with these guys. And it doesn't really change a lot because they're gonna portal somebody next year. They have to, and not Peyton Thorne, but like somebody else. But it's worse than it has to be. It's not a fun first year for Auburn because of how bad the offense is. Alabama 24, Arkansas 21. The noon window of games was the most non-competitive, boring slate of football games that we have maybe ever done on this show. Thankfully, Arkansas created a brief illusion that this one would have a finish. It did not because they couldn't get the ball back because Alabama killed the clock.
Arkansas, the first two drives of the game, got to sort of no man's land-ish and kicked field goals, and I'm like, God, go for it. Even though their kickers got an absolute boot. Alabama's offense has evolved or devolved to just chuck it. I mean, it's a fuck it, he down there somewhere offensive situation for Alabama, which does make it quite fun, especially now that Jermaine Burton has sort of emerged here as a primary target. KJ Jefferson had like an act of God play that if you watch the press conference, Nick Saban is like exasperated in trying to explain, not mad at his team, but like just he'd never seen anything like that on a football field. It was quite incredible. Tennessee 20, Texas A&M 13. This was not how we thought it was going to go. Tennessee needed a punt return for a touchdown to even pretty much create the margin in this game. Texas A&M's defense showed up. We hate that Walter Nolan was carted off at the end of the game there.
Looked like, really devastating too. It's tough to see. Yeah.
But Tennessee did enough in this game.
So special teams matter. And in the case of Tennessee here, the guy D. Williams who ran back the punt also had just like a perfect downing of a punt, like well inside the 1 yard line, like with his foot 2 centimeters off the goal line earlier in this game. It was maybe the difference in the game on the margins, as you say, was the special teams and one player's excellence in particular. It matters. A&M, I mean, I don't know. I'm sympathetic to some extent, like because they have a backup quarterback, but what's the point of having all this money and Jimbo Fisher and Bobby Petrino if it's going to be like this? I don't know. I think the fan base is pretty exasperated, and I understand why. Florida 41, South Carolina 39.
That's
cool
right.
For Graham Mertz. I think the first moment of his career since maybe his first game at Wisconsin back in the pandemic year that unfolded probably exactly how he envisioned it would when he was a very hyped recruit. Like this was a big time effort by him in this game. I was happy for him. Nice to see.
Yeah, Mertz has not been the problem, really. I think when you get a gettable secondary, Florida actually has the receiver talent now. They are developing to get after you. Again, when you play a gettable secondary, in 2 weeks, secondary is a little less gettable. Mizzou 38, Kentucky 21. Missouri 6-1, rolling in the non-Georgia class of the SEC East.
Dude, let's give it up for Eli Drinkwitz here. I can't believe I'm saying this on this podcast so soon after thinking that this guy might get fired. A great coaching call that totally turned this game. They're down 14-0. They have a drive get snuffed out like around midfield, maybe just inside in the second quarter. And they dial up the most ballsy fake punt that you can have, which is just a snap deep to the punter and just chuck it to the one-on-one man who's playing gunner, but is really going to be the receiver here. Marcus Johnson catches it, mosses the guy, scores, and Mizzou gets to work from there. It was a completely different game after that point. Sometimes it's a feel sport. It's a feel sport where you just got to figure out, like, what is a moment when something like that has a decent chance of working, and when does your team really need it? And check for Mizzou. And the game was totally different after that.
You saw it last week in Red River. It's a feel sport sometimes, and it made the right call. K-State 38, Texas Tech 21 in the Big 12. Kansas State has this backup quarterback. They come in and they run this 2-quarterback system. The guy can go because Chris Kleiman and that offensive staff, or that whole coaching staff, are a bunch of absolute sickos. And yeah, man, it works because of course it works.
The run blocking for them is pretty pornographic. If you just watch the way that they move people on the touchdown run for Avery Johnson, I think he might have run into, but it definitely won. Ben Sinnott, who's a tight end, was coming around and just like flattening people. Threw one guy on the ground, gave one guy like a free ride through the end zone.
Yeah.
That's a tight end doing that. They obviously have some of the best interior offensive linemen in the country. Cooper Beebe is a guy we've mentioned before, All-American player. They do what they do, and they are still the defending champions of the Big 12, by which I mean they still have a shot in this conference. I think that they are the team that if it's not going to be a Red River rematch, it's now going to be Kansas State. So if you're rooting for that, you should be rooting for Kansas State. Oklahoma State 39, Kansas 32. Kansas with a backup quarterback, also a backup quarterback who was down 14-0. To say that they should have won this game is very bizarre, but also kind of true.
Yeah, both Kansases have a second quarterback situation that is pretty good. Like Jason Bean's the running quarterback. Like Jason Bean is the quarterback that you didn't expect to be able to throw back into a game, and he pretty much did. Again, they had a good chance to win.
Which, by the way, to go back again, like we're talking about Auburn, talking about Texas A&M, and it's like, what can you do with this quarterback situation? Well, I don't know, man. Like, look at Kansas. Look at Kansas State. Like,
Kansas guys,
like you guys can't do the things that these Kansas, like at some point it's a little bit of a failure of imagination because you look at what the Kansas schools are doing with the quarterback situations that they have, and there's no real reason why that couldn't be the much more resource SEC programs with the alleged offensive savants leading them. I don't really get that. Iowa State 30, Cincinnati 10. Iowa State is 3-1 in the Big 12, and maybe I should include them. I don't think that they have the upside that I just mentioned with Kansas State. I just don't think that.
Maybe you should.
But they are 3-1, and they have definitely prevented this season from getting away from them and being a disaster in the way that it totally looked like it could, both before the season with the gambling stuff and during the season when they lost to Ohio a couple weeks ago, about a month ago now. Rocco Beck, the young quarterback, named to know in the sport going forward. And Jaden Higgins, who we talked about, we previewed him before the season for you, the EKU transfer wide receiver, really good player and torched Cincinnati in this game. And Cincinnati is now torchable. They are not what they were. They are pretty bad.
TCU 44, BYU 11. TCU not what they were, but able to come out here and absolutely smoke BYU. Look, it may get a little harder next week when they play K-State and things get a little weird, but I don't know. BYU is not looking up for it this season.
BYU is weird. I mean, they're weird. I think that they have had moments where they've looked up for it, including against the bad Cincinnati team that we talked about. Basically, all of the Big 12 schools, except for the one that we're going to mention in a moment, the new ones, have so far only beaten each other. They are putting forward pretty bad performances against the legacy Big 12 members. But for TCU here, we talked about it this week. They have really lacked the explosive element to things since Quentin Johnston left, since the end of last year. They got it back in this game. J.P. Richardson was a deep ball menace here. And they also, I think this is important, made I believe an injury-induced quarterback change from Chandler Morris to Josh Hoover. And I think that this might be a Wally Pipping that is going on in Fort Worth.
Welcome to Stoppage Time. Houston 41, West Virginia 39. I got two texts back-to-back last night, or on Thursday night when this game happened. That was like somebody quoting a Houston person that was like, I'm done with this, I'm fed up. And then the next text was like, holy shit. And I looked at them both at the same time because I was out. And then I was like, wait, what happened at the end of this game? And then you look at what happens at the end of this game. Classic. Just classic.
Yeah. 2 touchdowns, trading touchdowns in the last like 25 seconds or so. Both completely inexplicable to give up, but they cancel each other out. And where things wind up is that Houston, which had the upper hand in this game, wins the game, probably harshes the vibe a little bit on what had been kind of an upbeat season for West Virginia. Tulane 31, Memphis 21 at the Liberty Bowl on Friday. Tulane is going to be back in the American title game. That is, they are set to be on cruise control back to that game at this point, and they're going to have a possibility of going back to a New Year's Six bowl game. For Memphis, I think one of the questions there has been Seth Hennigan all year, and he threw a crippling interception in this game. This was early fourth quarter. They were threatening to tie or go ahead. They were down 3 at midfield. It's 1st and 10. They're driving, and he throws an interception. Tulane goes and scores. That's that.
UTSA 41, UAB 20. UTSA, okay, all right, rounding in form a little bit.
Getting it back.
Like what you see. FAU 56, USF 14. USF is not
Progress is not linear. Progress is not linear.
That is true.
Progress is not linear. SMU 31, ECU 10 on Thursday. Just keep eyes on SMU, by the way, to be relevant here in their last year in this conference. They are on a decent track themselves to be in the title game. They avoid Tulane. They have a game against Memphis in like mid-November, a week before Thanksgiving, that could be, if UTSA doesn't have something to say about it, that could be a decider of who gets to play against Tulane in the American title game. Quick notes as well. North Texas 45, Temple 14. That's the first win in the new conference for the Mean Green. Chandler Rogers, quarterback there, really hummed. Nice for them. Charlotte gets shut out 14-0 at Navy. They have yet to win. They are 0-2 in this league. The second kind of return to the Baltimore area for Biff Poggi this year, and the second disappointing loss. I don't think he said anything like outrageous at the podium after this game, but I imagine that morale is pretty low at Charlotte right now.
Georgia State 41, Marshall 24. Can't really figure out Marshall, who remains with more ACC wins than Sun Belt wins, which is curious.
They are a funny team. Georgia State, though.
JMU, who we know cannot play in the conference championship game.
Georgia State might be
play
good.
in the conference championship game because, holy shit, JMU got after Georgia Southern. Southern has some all or nothingness to that offense, and they got nothing in this game.
Dude, JMU, I think, is the best team in the group of 5, and it is not a credit to anybody, well, except maybe Air Force, we'll get to them, that they are not eligible to play in the postseason. It's a little silly when you look at the realities of what they are. I mean, they're just like, they're fantastic. Like, Kurt Cignetti has just a really good team. They're very, very good. Coastal 27, App 24, weeknighter, in a game that I think is going to make some anxiety at App State. App was down 14-0. They fought back. They had a chance. And I will note that they fought back despite their running back, Nate Null, who was like one of the top 2 or 3 rushers in the country coming into this game, having 1 carry and being hurt. But I think nonetheless that with Coastal on the back foot and looking pretty grim coming into this game, this will cause angst. Like, this is the kind of game that App does not fancy losing. They've had, all of their losses. Not last year. They had a few kind of brutal ones that were really ugly performances. But the Wyoming loss that they took against a good Wyoming team with a blocked field goal going the other way, the UNC game that they just let get away from them at the very end, this one that they let get away against a team that they want to beat in their conference. It's I do think that we are on the verge of a dialogue about that stuff.
Texas State 21, ULM 20. Texas State comes back. Bobcats are going to a bowl game, by the way. Bobcats they're bowling. That's a postseason team.
They put 28,000 people at this game.
Exciting.
Like they are. That is an exciting thing that's happening in college football right now. And they have never played in a bowl game before. They've won 6 games just once in FBS back when they were in their Dennis Franchione, when he was doing his like Schnellenberger FAU thing, right when they were coming up to FBS. But like they have a chance. I mean, they are going to go bowling, I think. And like the fan base seems like they're like really bought in San Marcos right now. It's actually pretty cool to see.
Troy 19, Army nothing. Tough for Army to come into this game and just get blanked by a Troy defense that is back to being its Troy
they're back.
defensive.
They're back,
self.
baby. We're so back.
Mountain West, Air Force 34, Wyoming 27. Wyoming hung in this game. This was not Air Force did not kind of kick their ass in that way
sort
of thing.
Yeah.
This is not the Mountain West championship game, but I mean, hell, we may. Do they do division Mountain West? I don't even know.
But I forget. I think the Mountain West did away with their divisional structure this year. But continue talking, and I'll confirm that.
Anyway, Air Force, they won. Look, you know what they're bringing to the table. High efficiency rushing attack, as efficient as it can get in college football. It was on display in this game. I was asleep for this one, Alex. I woke up to it. The Hail Mary, Colorado State, 31-30 over Boise. The Boise thing is getting a little tough to hold up, as Boise is having a down year and is 3-4.
Yeah, confirmed. It's the best 2 records in the Mountain West. The West and the Mountain divisions have gone the way of the dodo in that league. For Boise, it's a crushing way to lose, not just a Hail Mary, but the defensive back swatted the Hail Mary ball to the ground and just somehow into the diving hands of a Colorado State player. Like, maybe we need to rethink on what you're supposed to do when you're a DB in those situations. Maybe you should just catch it. The conventional wisdom is you're not supposed to try to catch it, because then it can get wrestled out of your hands, or if you try to catch it, it can pop up and it can create a jump ball, like another opportunity for the catch. Sometimes shit's just gonna happen like that. But Boise fans, I think, are like steamed with this coaching staff. Like, they were up 31-10 in this game with minutes remaining. It was a complete collapse even before the Hail Mary gets caught. They are wasting an incredible season by Ashton Jeanty, one of the best running backs, not just in the G5, but in the country. And I mean, they're Boise and they played 7 games. They lost 4 of them. I don't want to. Actually, it's funny. I said last night, I was like, I don't know if they're cooked, because like we said that last year and then they weren't. And then a Boise fan was like, nah, man, we're cooked. Like, so I don't know. I mean, you gotta, they're not Boise. Like, they have lost their edge on the rest of this conference. And if you're a Boise fan and you view that as unacceptable, I understand that.
Fresno 37, Utah State 32.
Fresno's 2-1 in the league. A lot of fun. This was a weeknighter. Jeff Tedford likes his bag of tricks. They had a nice wide receiver pass back touchdown from Jalen Gill in this game. Fresno did this with their backup quarterback, Logan Fife, playing, not Mikey Keene, who was hurt. Also in a rivalry game on Saturday night, UNLV 45, Nevada 27. Nice rivalry win for UNLV, which has 5 wins. Barry Odom's doing a nice job there. I think that Nevada is like a disaster scene. They might be the worst program in FBS. Like, it's grim there, like the definition of a no-hoper situation for them at the moment. But UNLV is probably going to make a bowl game. So prepare yourselves.
Northern Illinois 23, Ohio 13. This was a very even game, except then Nathan Rourke, Curtis Rourke threw 3 picks in the fourth quarter, and they lost. Bowling Green 24, Buffalo 14. Buffalo is kind of losing the plot, kind of lost the plot, I think, past tense. Miami of Ohio 34, Western Michigan 21.
That's the team. That's the team to watch in that half of the MAC now, particularly with Ohio losing. I think Miami is solid and is looking like a good bet to get Toledo in the MAC championship game. Conference USA slate, Richard, is all weeknights now. So that is a bit against the spirit of the hurry up because you probably already know some of these results, but want to kind of do a quick whip around. Liberty is cruising, had no problem at all on the road against Jacksonville State, 31-13. They're 4-0 in the league. And I think the game to circle, which could be the first, probably will be the first of 2 meetings between those teams, is the Libs at Western Kentucky 2 Tuesdays from now. Louisiana Tech took a brutal road loss to a bad Middle Tennessee. Tough for Louisiana Tech, kind of flies in the face of the idea that they are getting more serious. And New Mexico State, 27-13 over Sam Houston, which is 0-6, and has as bad an offense as you will ever find, Iowa included, in FBS football. It's bad. However, I still think they're going to win one soon because they are getting into the non-business end of the Conference USA schedule.
the casual end.
Yes.
The casual end of this game.
Also, if you stayed up late, you were rewarded with a really fun Big Sky game. We told you about it on the midweek. Montana and Idaho. Grizz win 23-21. They had a big lead. Idaho comes back at a sold-out Kibbe Dome and gets it to the point where a 2-point conversion late in the fourth quarter would tie it, send it to overtime, or at least require Montana to go down and kick a field goal to win. Didn't pan out, but it is a nice palate cleanser to watch a sold-out Kibbe Dome game on national television late at night, thanks to the Big Sky.